live radio, local podcasts, the Frederick Podcast Network at listenfrederick.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, it's time to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast.
Sizzling, what's going on with you, Batman?
Not much. I shaved for the show. Got a lot of compliments. Got a new razor.
I took a nice hot shower after I ran around. I was supposed to go give a little plasma and make my $55, but I just wasn't feeling it. So I ran over and played 15 holes of disc golf. I did so good on the first 9. I was +1. Should have been even, but I made a dumb throw. Back 9, I was just miserable. I only played 6 holes and I was +6. I was like, damn,
Sounds like a little blood, sweat, and tears to me.
I'm getting better. My throws are getting better. My drives are getting better, but you just got to keep playing and playing and playing. I'm addicted, so it's not a problem with playing it.
Yeah, just ask Hayden. He's been playing those video games for years, and he's really good at them.
I'll bet he is. He knows all that, all them buttons. Hey, Sizz, our guest this week on the OSP has been part of the Pittsburgh Penguins media for many years, and will be sharing his insight on the past, the present, and the future of the organization from his perspectives. Bob Grove covered the Penguins for 17 seasons at the Washington Observer Reporter and 14 seasons for the Pittsburgh Sports Report. He spent 16 seasons on the Penguins radio network. He wrote Pittsburgh Penguins, the official history of the first 30 years, and contributed to the second edition of Total Hockey, the official encyclopedia of the National Hockey League as well. So Bob will be joining us shortly. Right now, though, I thought we'd talk a little NFL football since we have a little bit of time. Sis, what'd you think of the weekend games?
NFL weekend games?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I watched a little of the Thursday night game, and the main weekend game I saw was the Steelers, obviously, because I was up in the Berg. Watched till the third quarter, and then on my way home, I tried to watch a little of that Cowboys-Dallas game, but it wasn't working out, going through the mountains and whatnot. And then I think I watched some of that Sunday night game. The Rams and Lions game was really good. And I watched a little bit of last night's game, the Jets and the Niners. Overall, just good to be back in the football season, swing of things. I don't know if I told you guys I'm helping coach the girls' inaugural season of flag football. And then, you see across the field, the teams working out, sons playing for football for local high school, just having fun in the football swing of things. But I don't think there were really any big shockers or surprises this week one.
I do. I think the Cincinnati game was
some close games. I was going to say that one would probably be the only one that really stood out. I didn't expect the Patriots to do as well as they did, even beat the Bengals. The Bengals were very dismal, only scoring 10 points. Other than that, like I said, nothing really stood out to me.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Cincinnati, in my opinion. Like, here you go with Joe Burrow being back. This is what, year 4 for him? And
yes.
he was injured 2 years and got shut down 2 years, went to the Super Bowl 1 year, right? They went to the Super Bowl 1 year with him.
His second year, last year got hurt, and then now he's, this year.
So it's going to be interesting. I don't know if they have the same amount of weapons. They lost Joe Mixon in the backfield. They lost Tyler Boyd at receiver. I don't know how happy T. Higgins is, even though they paid him. Jamar Chase once paid. Burrow always has issues with his offensive line. They really haven't solidified that for him. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. What'd you make of the situation with Tyreek Hill? What was your take on that? For those of you who don't know, Tyreek Hill was pulled over going over 100 miles an hour in Miami on his way to the game on Sunday.
100 miles an hour, over 100. I thought it was like 120. Sammy Hagar is going to have to write a new song. I can't drive 125. It's crazy. First of all, he didn't even have a seatbelt on.
No.
You know, going that fast, it looked like a 4-lane highway, maybe at most. So he's just a knucklehead for doing that. But manhandled the way he was not looking good for the Dade County Police. It's all over social media. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It was unnerving, to say the least.
Well,
And
here's what I have to
what
say
he
about
did though during the game was kind of bizarre. I don't agree with that, but that's not to say how he was handled was acceptable by any stretch of the imagination.
Have you seen the video? Have you watched the video and heard the voice?
Yes.
Okay. So when the cop knocks on his window and he says, "Don't knock on my window," and he tells him, "Roll it down," and he rolls it up. He wrote it down and wrote it right up. And he said, "Roll your window down." He refused to do it. He told him several times. Then eventually he opens the door and he tells him, "Get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the car." He refused to do it.
Yeah.
He was refusing everything that this cop has done. He's no angel, dude. He was arrested when he was in college. He was arrested a few years ago, and it was proven he broke his his little kid's arm, but they didn't have enough evidence to go on to do whatever they wanted to do. He's just not a good dude. Okay, maybe he shouldn't get roughed up by the cops. Okay, that's whatever. Okay, all right. The cops need to be professional too, from that perspective. But he's just not a good person. Just follow directions. Just because you're a professional athlete, make 30 million, 50 million, whatever you make a year, doesn't mean you're special. I don't like that shit. I don't subscribe to it, and I think it's bullshit. And that's part of our society's problem.
Yeah. He was being a knucklehead about, he's not a knucklehead, just being controversial, I think. I don't know. From what we gather from our friends of color, I wouldn't be pushing it like that whenever they, have guns, and I don't know. I would have just been very compliant, and it was frustrating to see on both ends. And I felt more for Tyreek because I didn't want to see him be mistreated more than what he already was, but it was bad, I thought, on both ends.
At some point, though, you've got to recognize that the police have a job to do. Him driving over 100 miles an hour in a completely blacked out car through the middle of Miami on his way to the game is not admissible. That doesn't make him special. If he's late, he's late. That's his fault.
Yeah.
He shouldn't get any special privileges. If that was you or me who did what he did, we'd be in jail still.
Yeah.
Still.
So would Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I have a problem with it. Hey, did you see any of Caleb Williams' inaugural game?
I saw some highlights, which were pretty much low lights. I wouldn't say he did anything really, again, to stand out. He threw for 93 yards. That's a good way to break in to the NFL. 15 rushing yards. Not anything to ride home about. They did get the W, though.
Yeah, none of those rookie quarterbacks did much. Jane Daniels for Washington. But you know what? I'll say this about Washington. They look like they're turning the corner.
Yes. Well, hey, Jaden Daniels probably had the best of the 3 starting rookie quarterbacks. He was 184 with 88 rushing yards and 2 TDs, 2 rushing touchdowns, and they lost. And then Bo Nix, on the other hand, he won that starting job. He had 2 INTs. He threw for $128 and 35 rushing yards. But
so at the end of the day,
Williams, of the 3, I would say did the worst.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, did you happen to take a peek at Jordan Love's injury? Is that going to be detrimental to him?
No.
Is that going to linger all year?
No. Oh, that's a good question about lingering. I did see though that they're not putting him on the injured reserve, which means he's not going to have to sit out 4 games. So it probably will be week to week.
Yeah, they said they're going to evaluate him this week.
Yeah, however, it could linger for a couple weeks, but then once he comes back into that starting role, it'll be quite interesting to see what happens. But Malik Willis is going to take over the helm, and see what he can do against Indy this week.
I don't expect anything out of Malik Willis, to be quite honest with you. The guy didn't really play down in Tennessee, and when he did, he wasn't. What was he? He really wasn't. He was a guy coming out of college that was probably the best of a worst batch of quarterbacks in a long time. That was the Pickett draft. That was who else is in that draft machine? Pickett. What's his name? Malik Willis. The quarterback
was it Levis? Who? Levis?
Will Levis?
Yeah,
Levis?
actually. Yeah,
no, it couldn't have been Levis because he replaced Willis.
That's right. Levis came out last year with
Pickett,
CJ
Ritter, Willis, Corral.
Yeah, Matt Corral.
Zappy, Howe, Oladokin, Skylar Thompson, and Mr. Irrelevant, Purdy.
Oh, there's your best one out of the bunch. And he was the last one chosen. That's that says a lot if you ask me, but who the hell's asking me, right? So let me think, what else did we witness? Well, the Steelers lost their punter that they invested a hell of a lot of money in.
What do you think about the guy? What do you think about the guy that get brought in?
I like him. I wanted him to be. He came in last year when Percy Harvin was injured. I don't know if you remember it. He punted the crap out of the ball, and I don't know why they let him walk away last year. Like he can punt the ball.
Right.
Is he as good as Cameron Johnston? No, but Cameron Johnston's actually the best in the league. But this guy's going to go in okay. He's going to do what he needs to do. In my opinion.
Where's Harvin now, or did he just eat his way to the buffet?
He was with the Niners, and then he got released.
He got cut from the Niners. So ain't nobody picking up Harvin.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but he wasn't good in Pittsburgh.
I know. I'm just saying. I thought we had a good one
with Harvin.
Yeah, he was good in college.
Yeah, he was real good in college.
So was Sepulveda.
The interesting thing about that, Rasheen, is that shouldn't have a big significant change going from college to the pros as far as kicking and punting. You know what I mean? It's not like you're playing a different level of guys.
I agree.
Like that should have never changed. Maybe it was when his father passed away that it really, impacted him. Kind of like, Stephon Tuitt left football when his brother was killed.
Yeah.
But especially watching Pitt football, they seem to always keep a good field goal kicker, but those guys never make it to the NFL for some bad reason. So maybe there is some sort of difference, especially if you're kicking down that accuracy short because of the wind and everything, and you still can kick 50-yard field goals. You would think people would be jumping on you, but I don't think we got any in the NFL kicking field goals.
I think Chops is trying to join us, but it says his device is not connected.
Yeah,
we're a couple minutes away from Bob Grove joining us to talk Penguin hockey. I'm kind of excited to have a conversation with him, see what he knows about the Crosby contract, see what he thinks about the things Dubas are doing. Pittsburgh hasn't been the same the last couple of years. They're coming up short. Age is showing up for them a little bit. The bottom two lines have, I don't know how many years it's been now, 4 or 5 years. The bottom two lines are insignificant, and that's killing them. That's killing them. So it's going to be fun.
Did they change their style? Did they change their style because they were running gun, offense where they were just predicated on speed? And so what do they do? Do they just revamp the whole thing? Do they find guys to fit the system? Is Solly out of, we've been talking about him. He's got to be on the hot seat, right?
I don't think they're ever going to let him go. I don't know. We could ask Bob his thoughts on that. But I think that guy won a couple of Stanley Cups. He made a hell of a run for a long time, making the playoffs. They still believe in him, and at this point, let's just hope that they keep pushing the right buttons and get things going forward. So, hey, let's welcome Bob on the show. Mr. Grove, how are you?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. To your, I don't know. Terry Young, Rasheen Hill, part of
Terry.
my Barbershop crew. My other guy is still trying to get in. His computer crashed just as we were getting online tonight. And I was kind of like, wow, seriously, dude. So he's still working on that, but he'll be joining us hopefully shortly. Michael Mills. We're all Pittsburgh guys. You know that I'm from Vandergrift. Terry is actually my nephew, and Billy's cousin. And Rasheen has been a really good friend of mine for over 20 years. He's from the city. So
well, it's great to be with all of you. And when we talk about Vandergrift, in the AK Valley, that's my home as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Hey, where did it all start for you? What made you want to be part of the Penguin media?
Well, to be honest, Mark, you go through college. I went to Penn State and got a journalism degree. And at that point, I wanted to be a writer, number one. I had done an internship writing news at the Sharon Herald. So I wasn't necessarily thinking exclusively about the Penguins or sports, although that's absolutely, if you'd have asked me when I was still in college, like what would be your dream job, I'd say being a beat writer covering the Penguins for sure. But you know how life is. You're never sure where it's going to take you. Yep. And so it just worked out for me that I graduated from Penn State in '81. Got a job in Clearfield working at the Progress newspaper. Was only there a few months, and the Observer reporter down in Washington, PA, had an opening for somebody on the sports staff to cover the Penguins. It was like, you got to be kidding me. I said, so I went down for the interview and fortunately got that job, and that's how it worked out.
At that point, that they were still in limbo, trying to find their way. They're just basically they're trying to find Mario. That's what they were trying to do, right?
Yeah, you go back to the early '80s, right? They were, they were barely a playoff team, but they weren't going to get in the playoffs and do anything. And certainly, the '81 season they had a chance to do something. '82, we all remember what that was like against the Islanders in the playoffs. But '81 against the Blues was a heartbreaker as well. So that's sort of where they were. Yeah, at that point, a lot of people were thinking, God, when are we ever going to have the superstar?
Yeah.
Obviously the Penguins have had some stars through the years, and you could think about LaRouche and Apps and Pronovo and those guys. But they hadn't had one of the elite players in the league. And then, along comes the '83-'84 season where they're the worst in the league, and they get Mario Lemieux, and the rest, as they say, is history. And it couldn't have worked out any better for the Penguins. Look, you got to be honest with the way it's worked out for them. If you think about, a lot of people think about the Penguins, they think about perennial playoff teams, like 16 years in a row. And, they had a long streak before that. Starting Mario and the crew in '91. But the Penguins were fortunate. They got bad at the right time. They got Mario, and then they got bad again at the right time, and they got Sid.
Yeah, I used to love going down to the Igloo, spending $15 and sitting 8 rows from the glass, center ice. That was my favorite, and they were not very good back then, but it was still my favorite thing to do back in high school.
Who did they have? Zalapsky?
Zalapsky? No, he was down the road.
Charlie Zalapsky. Hey, Bob, shout out to the beat writers. I appreciate you being on here. My nephew's working for the Daily Chief in Upper Sandusky. He just graduated from the original Ohio. Hey, let's dig into this a little bit. Tell us about your experience when the Pens won the cup. What was it like in the locker room around the town? And did you get to put your lips on that thing?
No, I did not. I got to be around the cup, the next couple of days after they had won it, and the media were there covering the ceremonies in Pittsburgh, down at the Point. I got to be around the cup a little bit there. Got some pictures with it then, and a little bit later in the summer. Was fortunate enough, and anyone who's been around the Stanley Cup has that same kind of feeling. If you're a big hockey fan. It's like it's unreal to just touch the thing and to just be standing beside it and getting a picture taken with it. So that was my thing with the cup. But what was it like to be? It was nuts. was absolutely nuts in the city at that point. You remember what it was like going out to the airport the night they won it. I was in Minneapolis when they won it, so I didn't get to see the airport scene, but I saw the video of it. It was insane. People who went through that and got stuck on the Parkway going out there, their memories of it. The video of the team trying to wade through the crowd when they got to town. It was absolutely insane, and it was great to see. It was absolutely. I mean, it's the easy word is surreal, but having grown up, I saw my first Penguin game in 1970. So, I always wondered as a fan, would we ever really see this happen? Would we ever see them win a Stanley Cup? And then if you remember, you get Mario, and it's not like, oh, boom, we got Mario. Next year we're in the playoffs. No, that's not how it worked. It took them 5 years just to get in. And it took them 7 to make a long run and win it. So you wondered what it would be like. And, I can remember following the story that night from Minneapolis, and you go into the third period with a lead like that. You said, I actually had people calling me saying, do you believe what you're seeing? And it was that kind of a night.
Wow.
And we were at the rally at the Point 91. That's what you're talking about. I think I recognize you. You had the Yager mullet. You were wearing that Yager mullet, right?
It would have been, if I had one, I would have been one of many, many people who had it, right? Because he was so popular, right? I mean, that was one of the things about that. That was a fun team.
And he got up there, he only knew 5 words. Elvis has left the building. That's all he could say.
Yeah, well, he was tight with Mike Lang, throughout his career. And so he would learn from Mike. But he was so much fun to be around. And, you could see his love for the game even at that age, which is proven over the years. But, Kevin Stevens was just a big guy with a huge personality. Ronnie Francis, Ulf Samuelson, those guys who had been around the league and probably themselves started to wonder if they'd ever get a chance to win it. And then Mario, of course, and Recchi, a guy drafted in later rounds, a smaller guy. Can he really be a scorer in the National Hockey League? Yeah, he's been good in the Western League. But can he really be good? And, today he's in the Hall of Fame. Well, I think if I remember right, when Yager finally quits and they finally put him in the Hall of Fame, there'll be 9 players from that team who are in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So that's, yes, they had an incredible skill level. Yes, they had an incredible player in Mario. But there was a little bit of, Trottier was so good and so important to Yager's development, but was so good still on the ice. I mean, you wouldn't find a more competitive guy than Brian Trottier. Didn't matter what his age was. So that team had everything. They had Badger, patting them on the back when they needed it, not ripping them. They had every guy played that little bit of a role, but they were something to watch. And for me, one of the things that I remember most about that run, when I talk about all this talent, but I'm also talking about the personalities, there's a little cockiness there. And let's be honest, you need that when you want to win a championship. You need somebody. Now, Kevin Stevens in Boston, they go down 2-0. He stands up in front of the media and says, we're going to win the series. Now, remember, they're down 2-0 to a Bruins team that was not only good, but just made a living out of just beating the heck out of the Penguins. Had experience, had much more playoff experience than the Penguins had. And you know what it's like. I mean, I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but when you're down 0-2 in a playoff series, you're pretty much done.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And he stands there in Boston and says, we're going to win the series. That's the kind of attitude they have. And that's what winners have.
They seem to have great chemistry too on that team.
Hey, Bob, I'm sorry.
I was just going to talk about like guys like Troy Loney, Jock Hollander. They brought up. I mean, they just seem to have good chemistry no matter who came through the doors. They fit right in.
They had their roles defined.
Yep.
Under Badger. That's
always good. Knowing your role is always good.
That's right. Oh. Troy Loney didn't have to be anything he wasn't. Phil Bourque didn't have to be anything he wasn't. Randy Gillen didn't have to be anything he wasn't, etc. So that's when you have something special.
Hey, Bob, I know you were around for many of Mario's health struggles. Can you describe what drove him to always come back and make a difference?
Well, you have to have, the amount of, you have to will yourself to do a lot of things when you're in those situations. It was good that he had so much support and people behind him, but at the end of the day, he had to believe he could do it. He had to believe he could come back. And, he's done many interviews where he talked about the fact, he wasn't sure he was going to walk again. He didn't know what he was going to be able to do. So it's really down to his character. I mean, that's the thing that made it happen. And the doctors gave him the right, the right way to recover from this. But especially when you get knocked down the way he did, one thing after another, the cancer diagnosis, it was so scary to watch one guy go through this. And to see, you could see it, after games when he was in so much pain. And, the stories are well known, people have to tie his skates, etc. But he believed. He had the will, and he believed he was going to find a way to get things done. And boy, did he deserve those 2 cups. Wow. I just wish he could have been healthy for longer, because he would have won more than 2.
More importantly, were you in the wine cellar? Have you been to the wine cellar?
No.
That's all we hear. They talk about Lemieux's on the ice, but he has this immaculate wine cellar. That's all you hear. Read about.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of his things. He loves the golf, he loves the wine, etc. And he's got the money to be able to go out and get the things that he wants, and he deserves it. So it's been.
You got to tell him you're doing a special piece on wine. You still got connections there. You can go see him.
I don't have those kind of connections, but he was. I'm privileged to say that I had a chance to watch him. And,
fantastic.
And cover.
Bob, I got to say this about Mario. He always had time for the fans.
Yeah.
He always I mean, it was amazing to just watch him interact with people even when he was hurt. Is this what's part of what's missing from this team? Is Mario's personality and his drive, so to speak, missing from this team right now?
No, I don't think it's that. I mean, you get the drive. You get the same kind of drive from Sidney Crosby,
right?
I mean, he's won 3 Stanley Cups. You get every team is really different. I don't care how many. Look, we know in professional sports today, you never bring back the same players every season.
No.
Even when you win Stanley Cups,
yeah.
Probably especially when you win Stanley Cups. Look at the number of Florida Panthers that have already left that team.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of reinvent yourself every season. And the Penguins right now, to compare them with like Mario's Cup teams, we just talked about how many Hall of Famers they had. You don't have that kind of talent level with today's team. You had it in a couple special seasons in 16 and 17, and you had it in 09. But no, Sid's absolutely able to give you the same kind of drive that Mario did, for sure.
Yeah, I gotta appreciate that. Who made your job hard as a coach when you were working with the Penguins? What coach made your job hard?
Well, I'll be honest with you. When you're a beat guy, they can make it frustrating. I don't know if they can make it really difficult. They could if you have a tighter relationship with them. I mean, one of the things about, I was a beat guy at a 40,000 circulation suburban paper, so I wasn't traveling with the team during the regular season. I traveled in the playoffs, but that was it. So I didn't have the same sort of relationship with coaches that a guy at the Post-Gazette or the Press would have had.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally with these guys every single day, nearly every single day. And so I think if you're around like that, then it can start to get difficult because you probably rely on them a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I can think of Bob Berry, and so what I was going to say was, it's not difficult so much as sometimes it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And Bob Berry could be a good quote when he wanted to be, but he often, when I think about some of the years he was coaching, so the Mario's first 3 years, it was not unusual for him. I don't know. I'd have to go back and think maybe 3-4 times a season he wouldn't show up for the media grilling after the game. And I can, we can all remember, all of us guys who were back there can remember Cindy Himes, who was the Penguins PR director at the time. She would walk into we'd all be standing there waiting for him, and she'd walk in and she'd just say, She says, Coach Berry has no comment. The room is open.
Hey,
it got to be funny after a while. But so, yeah, that was Bob Berry kind of checking himself, I think. He had some nights he probably said, best for me not to go there. Who knows what I might do.
the Badger must have been just remarkable to work with, though. He just seemed like a huge personality himself with everybody.
He was. He absolutely was. He was. He's everything that's been advertised from people who are around him and talk about him. He was engaging. He was a nice guy who would talk to you about anything. I mean, I can remember him, talking in the playoffs about, hey, what are you guys doing, and the importance of getting out and going to see a movie or getting away from hockey for a little bit and maybe go and do something different. I can remember going in there to do one day I went in to do an interview with him, and he was in his office after practice, and I got in there and he said, I've had a long day. He said, yesterday I had a long day. I was shopping for clothes. I needed some suits, and he went into the cupboard and said, I bought this one. What do you think? And I bought, what I mean? He says, I got this pair of pants, and I was doing. And so that's not a conversation you're preparing yourself to have.
Right.
But that's the way Bob was. Bob could relate to you. Bob could absolutely relate to you on anything. The players will all tell you, even though they had an adjustment to make with his style of coaching, at the end of it, they just gave him so much credit for making them the team that they became.
He really set the stage for the next how many years now? We're kind of riding what he put in place, and in essence, for years, the expectations of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So.
No, he did. Well, I mean, he's the guy who helped them become a champion for the very first time.
Yep.
I'm sitting here talking about the 91 team and the talent and the personalities and all that other kind of stuff. But you can have it looks like everything you need on paper, but until you do it, it doesn't mean anything. And those are the guys who did it. And Badger Bob helped them do it. Yep. So yeah, absolutely helped set the tone for what could be possible for them. And certainly we saw that because he had the other, you went completely in the other direction. You had a guy in Scotty Bowman who didn't really get along that great with players, and really didn't anywhere he coached wasn't really great with players. But I mean, when a game was being played, once the puck dropped and you said who's the best guy to have maybe behind the bench to get the feel of a game and make adjustments that you needed for a game, probably Scotty Bowman's at the top of everybody's list.
Yeah.
So other than coaches, we go to players. Who would be your favorite player to interview over these years that you've been doing this? And what was your favorite interview? Describe that for us.
Well, I tell you, I'll be favorite interview. I can't really say one interview stands out for me, to be honest with you. I know that this will sound crazy, but in my times, one of the best players to give you an interview, and when I mean best players, I'm saying not spitting cliches at you, not telling you what you think you're going to hear, but actually listening to a question and giving you an answer that was really well thought out, was Tom Barrasso.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, this guy was a very intelligent hockey. He's in the Hall of Fame now as a player. He's an intelligent hockey man, knows the game, understands the game. And I can remember an interview I did with him, which went a lot longer than we normally talk. It was a one-on-one. I just happened to catch him, and he was in a good mood because I don't maybe I need to frame it because he was not good with the media. And and he was not good with the media, and none of us liked the way he handled himself. But I'm just saying, that's an interview I did that was really, really good. And he really had some thoughtful answers about playing goal and about the way he developed as a kid in playing goal. And it was a rarity to get him on a day like that. More times you got him when he had nothing to say, or he would ridicule your question. And I'm not excusing that behavior. It was awful. But that was one that stood out. But as far as a guy who I'd love to go to and talk to, it was Phil Bourque. Phil Bourque was the guy. He was the guy because I'll tell you what, he would cut through all the BS. He was another guy who he wouldn't give you, we got to be better and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he would just put it in plain English for you. And he was, sitting at the bar with you. And he would say, you know, we've been awful. We got nobody to blame but ourselves. I mean, he would really tell it like it is. And it was such a privilege of mine to work with him in the radio booth all those years, because he really helped me along the way too, you know, figure out the whole radio piece of it. And he is so good in that job. So I'm so glad he's still around.
Sometimes I catch him. He wants, he wants to spill something out of his mouth, and he'll just bite his tongue. You hear it coming. I mean, it just hear it coming. I mean, I still love listening to the radio. I mean, I watch every game, but I still like turning off the volume and listening to the radio. There's just something about the vision of the game in my brain. It's like baseball too.
Well, Mark, I'm the same way. Look, because I tell people that and this is the thing that, you know, when I got a chance to be on the Penguins broadcast team, it was an incredible thrill for me. All those years that I did it, it was a thrill every single day, every single night. One of the reasons was working with guys like Bork and like Mike Lang, who was so helpful to me, which is incredible to me. And I'd listened to as a kid. You know, it was I had to pinch myself that I was even doing this. And I grew up with listening to the Penguins on the radio, and I can remember the days. So I saw my first game in 1970, but I mean, if you go back to 71, 72, all right, you know, there were games. First of all, they weren't on TV. Every road game was not on TV. They weren't on TV all that much. In fact, they had some trips to the West Coast back then when they'd go to play LA and the Oakland Seals, or they'd go to Vancouver. There was no Pittsburgh radio. The game wasn't on the radio. When you got up for school the next morning, you had to turn on KDK in the morning and listen to John Steinbeck, and so he'd give you the score.
Yeah.
That's when you'd find out who won the game. You know, so I grew up with the Penguins on the radio, you know, listening to Starkey and listening to Forney and then listening to Lang. So it is, I totally agree with what you just said. And now I quite often, many nights, at least I would say probably 3 to 4 nights a week, I am listening via the internet to other NHL games when the Penguins aren't playing on the radio. Yeah. Some of them I do have the ability to go watch on TV, but I'm just like you. There's a magic about radio that I've never gotten out of my system.
100%. A good story for you. I used to hang out in my younger days down in the South Side, and at least once every, say, 3 weeks, we would go into the Blue Note down on the South Side, and there'd be Lang sitting there having a glass of, you know, brandy or whatever he was drinking, and we'd just roll up and talk to him. You know, sit down, fellas. You know, like he was that guy. Yeah. He was that guy.
He absolutely was that guy, and he loved interacting with fans. And I mean, I'm sure today he's still doing it. He loved interacting with fans, and he appreciated all of them. And he appreciated all the people that he worked with. He's an incredible guy to be around in those years for sure. And he liked his music like that. Yep. The blues. Yeah.
Hey, Bob, we're going to fast forward here to the Sidney Crosby era. How has the organization been different since he's joined?
Well, we talked earlier about the drive that he gives the team. But, you know, he's a guy who, look, I don't think there's any question he inspires those around him. He got surrounded with some good talent early, you know, after his first year when they were so bad, you know, Mario's last season, and, you know, Mario couldn't finish the season, unfortunately, because of his heart issue. You know, the next year, here comes Malkin, you know, here comes Stahl. You know, there comes Fleury. They started to surround these guys, you know, him with really talented young players. But trust me, these guys they were inspired by what they saw from Sid. What they could tell what he was doing in the off season. They could see what he was doing every night on the ice when he was a target for everybody they played with. So that part of it hasn't been any different at all. And that's why the Penguins are so fortunate. When you go from one superstar like Mario to another like Sid, and both of them had surrounding cast of Hall of Famers, as we discussed. You still need the guy who's the heartbeat, the guy who's going to win you the game, the guy who's going to make the difference. And that's been him. In those years. And again, you know, you just wonder, we look at the numbers and we wonder where Mario would have been. We look at the numbers and we wonder where Sid had been. And if he hadn't missed basically, you know, all the time he's missed all the time that he's missed in his career. And another time when you weren't sure if he was going to be able to come back from the concussion. What was he going to be like? Was he going to be able to be the same, et cetera? So I don't think they've really lost a beat in that sense. And I don't think it's really all that different. They built the team around him just like they built it around Mario. Now they're trying to do, that's what they're trying to do again. You look at what Kyle Dubas has said and what he's doing. He's not, and he's said this, so I'm going to be paraphrasing him a bit, but he's not interested in just squeaking into the playoffs and getting kicked right out. What he's interested in is developing a team that can make another run. And when he says that, I personally feel like what he's saying is that's not this coming season, and it's maybe not next season, but it's like maybe 2 to 3 seasons away. We're still waiting for Sid to sign a contract, but I think we can all see him playing for at least a few more seasons. And I think when Dubas talks about this, what I think he's aiming at is having the kind of team that you can maybe have Sid and make one more run. It's not this coming season, probably not next season, but maybe the year after. So they're still building around them.
Okay, so with that said, let's talk about the contract just a little bit. Is this going to get done? He got up in front of all those people in Vegas, 2 days ago, and he said, I'm more optimistic than ever that it's going to get done. Are you hearing whispers about what the sticking point is?
No, but I think you could say, look, if you look at his comments in the NHL media tour he did starting yesterday, his comments were, look, there's no question it's going to get done. But what he said, what I thought was the most telling was you sort of have to ask yourself every year how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Again, I'm paraphrasing. How are you feeling? And he said, the passion is still there for me. Like, I feel the same passion now as I did heading into my first training camp. So it's not a question of, is it going to get done? It is going to get done. But that almost makes it sound like the one thing I've thought while this was all going on before his comments was that Sid's trying to figure out how long he wants to play himself. I don't. And when I hear him then make a comment to say, it's something you have to sort of take stock about every year. How are you feeling? How are you doing? And so I just wonder in the back of my mind if what happens with Sid and the Penguins is they do a series of 1-year deals, or maybe a series of 2-year deals.
I was just thinking that,
based on what. Yeah, he's going to finish his career with the Penguins. I don't think there's any question about it. And he's going to play for as long as he feels like playing. But I just wonder if this summer he's been wondering a little bit about how long he feels like playing and trying to do the planning about, okay, what's the contract look like?
I think it's interesting that, he's thinking this, but yet you see him still sitting at the top of the league with points every year. Maybe not number 1 or number 2. He's not that guy anymore. But he plays a 200-foot game, and he's always productive. What did he have last year? 40 goals?
94 points, 40 goals.
Yeah,
he's a freak of nature like that. Like, look, we've had other guys. Look, we just had Joe Pavelski retire, and Joe Pavelski was an incredible goal scorer. At even older than Sid, but he's not. He doesn't have the same dimensions to his game.
37. Yeah.
Yeah. Sid's. You just said it. He's a 200-foot player. He's the captain. He can end up being a captain with one team longer than anybody in NHL history. He's going to tie Steve Yzerman this year, and he'll surpass him. He's playing at an incredibly high level, and it's just year in and year out. And you still see him whipping through the neutral zone. You say to yourself, how is it possible that this guy can still skate like this?
And we always see and hear about his intensity. After his shift, he goes to the bench. He's on the iPad. He's telling people he's another coach on and off the ice, and some like that. Some young guys like that, bringing him up under his wing and helping him along. But others are like, dude, just let me play. Like, where's the happy medium there?
Well, look, Sid will find a way to work it out with any of his teammates, but he's going to be available, and he's going to try to help them in every single way. Okay. Look, I would be shocked if there's any young player comes through that door and feels like he doesn't need to listen to Sidney Crosby's advice or guidance. I would just be shocked. And this is one of the things that Dubas has talked about is having these young players around Sid to learn from him before he has to hang them up. And I think that's absolutely could be very critical to the Penguins, because you ask anybody who's played with Sid, what do you take away from it? Again, They may not talk about it much every day, but they are, trust me, they're inspired by what he's doing and what he does in the off season to get himself ready to play.
And I think, yeah, you're right. I think credit goes to Mario too, because that's what he did with him, and that's what he did with Malkin, and now they're just paying it forward.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And Sid's very conscious of the fact that he needs to do this, and so he's going to do it. Everybody makes out because of it.
It'll be interesting to see what happens when Malkin's contract is up, because I think Letang still has so much left in the tank that he'll still be around a little bit. But Gino, I don't know.
Well, Letang's got 4 more years. Gino's got 2. And to your point, my sense, and this is all it is a sense, I don't know anything. My sense is that when Gino gets to the end of that contract, he's probably going to retire.
Which makes sense. I mean
he's 38 now. He'll be 39 in that last season. Yes, people play even beyond 40, but let's remember, that's not typical.
He's not going to play till he's 85 like Yager.
Or 86. Yeah, no, he's not. He's not. Hey, who knows?
Hey, Bob, speaking of Yager, I'm going to go back to this because I really want to know what happened to those bobbleheads and how many did you get?
I don't have any of them. And you know what? We never did get a great detailed story, did we? Of exactly how those things got pilfered.
Somebody ransacked the truck and stole
how they found them, though. How they got found, but they got found, and it was such a great story.
And
I love the Penguins doing that video that day with Yager getting in the car to go out after them. The whole bit was so great to see Yager back in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
it really was. I mean, yes, the breakup was ugly.
I was bitter, Bob. I was bitter for a long time.
So were a lot of people, Mark. I mean, look,
he went to Washington. Why not be bitter?
Well, or later going to Philly when it looked like Mario said maybe they would, they're interested in signing Yager, and he ends up going to Philly.
Yeah.
It was ugly, but times healed it. He was incredible while he was here, and it's so great that he's now, he's now sort of back in the fold with the Penguins. His jersey retirement was an amazing ceremony last season, and I'm just glad to see him.
I'm happy he's back, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He rectified himself. He really did.
Hey, Bob, can we get some thoughts on Dubas's off-season moves, free agency trades, whatnot?
Yeah, so look, he took a home run swing last summer, right? He comes in, he goes out and he gets Carlson and he gets some other guys, and it didn't work out. They missed the playoffs by 3 points last season after missing it just by 1 the previous season. And a lot of that was because of the power play. And he's done kind of the same thing, but not to the extent that he did the previous summer. So he goes out and he gets Grzelcyk, a veteran defenseman. And so they needed somebody there. They moved on POJ. He's in St. Louis now. Grzelcyk's an interesting character because, he played a lot with Charlie McAvoy. He was on the top pair in Boston. He's 30 years old now. He didn't have a great season. Jim Montgomery talked at times in the playoffs last season about the fact that he wasn't transitioning quick enough. So that'll be something to watch for Matt Grzelcyk. And people have him sort of inked in as a bottom pair guy. Maybe with Jack St. Ivany, but I would say this: I'm not sure that Ryan Graves is going to play with Letang. Joseph played with Letang most of last season, and we know that Graves had a disastrous season in his first year in Pittsburgh. Would they consider putting Grzelcyk with Letang? He's played a lot of big minute nights with McAvoy, so he knows what it's like. We'll see if he can get his game there. So that's an interesting, he's not a big guy, but he's a veteran presence. They added Sebastian Aho on defense. They get him from the Islanders. So he's been a 6 or 7D his whole career. And he'll play the same role here. Rutger McGroarty was a real shocker. The Braden Yeager for Rutger McGroarty trade, that kind of a trade from 2 elite prospects, 1-for-1, you just never see that. And I'm really anxious to see this kid captain Team USA to the World Junior title last season. I'm not a fan of him basically being drafted by Winnipeg and saying, I don't want to go there. I got to be honest with you. I love the intangibles of players. And if you can be captain of the U.S. World Junior team, you got something special. And he's not only got that, but he's got the skill level. Look, he's not the fastest guy. He's not the highest skilled guy, but everyone talks about his competitiveness. So I like the intangible you get with a guy who's captained the team at that level. It's going to be really interesting to see where they can try and fit him in. But I got to say, I'm not a fan of young guys just telling the team that drafted them, not playing for you. So we'll see.
Interesting that you say that, because look how many guys do that in other professional sports. You got it in football, you got it in basketball. You don't really see it in baseball because that's a whole nother animal with all the different tiers of guys. But you only got really, what do you got? You got 3 tiers at the professional level of hockey with the AHL, ECHL, and subsequent leagues like that, and then the NHL. Everything I've read about this kid, like you just said, is it because he is the next Sidney Crosby or someone like that? It's all the other intangibles that he brings to the table in the locker room and on the ice that make him special. I think they kind of stole him. As much as I liked Jaeger, I don't think he is going to bring to the table what this kid has the opportunity to do.
Yeah, he's not going to bring exactly the same thing, but we got to wait and see how it works out. I'm a guy who's like, the idea of saying who won the trade the day you made the trade, I think, is ludicrous.
I agree with that.
Any sport. So let's just wait and see. But I just wanted to finish the question, though. Kevin Hayes, we'll see where he fits in. Could he be the 3C? Could they move him to the wing? He's big. He's not particularly quick. He was a healthy scratch at times. I think Blake Lizotte is the guy who's going to have the biggest immediate impact. He's a fiery guy. I mean, he's a gritty guy to play down on your fourth line. And I mean, he's a terrific penalty killer. Undrafted guy who's only played 1 game in the American League in his career. That's a rarity. He's played all these years in LA. And then Cody Glass, another big body, but he's coming off his worst season in the NHL. Where does he fit in? If you look at what Dubas has done this summer, he's brought in all these guys that I've talked about here. And the big piece of it is try and rebuild the bottom 6, because the top 6 is more or less, you know what it's going to look like. You think, Drew O'Connor probably would stay with Sid, I would guess, even though you wouldn't want him to settle in as a number 1 left wing on your team. Don't think that's really his skill set, but he's been good. I think we all like him, and he's getting better. But the question is, what does the bottom 6 look like? They've got the Penguins, as they go into camp, they got legitimately a dozen guys competing for 6 spots on the bottom 6. And a lot of them are centers, like Lizotte, like Hayes. You've got Eller, and I love Eller. I thought he brought them so many good things last season. I would try to find, even though he's 35, I would try to find a way to keep him. He's a gamer for me. So which of these centers play on the wing? How does it all work out? So these are the things that will have to be worked out by Mike Sullivan through the preseason.
So basically I'm sorry for cutting you off there, but basically what you're saying is if they find a 3rd and 4th line that's going to be somewhat productive for them, we could see them back in the playoffs 24-25 season.
Well, they're not going to get there without that. So yes, if they think they're making the playoffs this year, they better find a bottom 6 that can impact the game. It's not really about the points. It's not about the goals and the points either. I mean, Lizotte's not a guy who's going to score a ton. And Kevin Hayes, he's seen better days as a scorer. He's a pass first guy. So if you're going to take advantage of what he brings you on the 3rd line, you're hoping he's good defensively. Again, not great speed for him, but if he's a pass first guy. If he's going to make an impact a little bit offensively, who's he going to play with? Is Pustonen ready? Is Pustonen going to be a guy who can get his scoring? I love Pustonen. I love his speed. I think he's an underrated defensive player, but he's just, to me, when I watch him, I just don't think he's ever going to be a big finisher. And so if you're going to play Hayes at center, you need to play him with guys who can get the puck and maybe make something happen with it occasionally. So it isn't just about the points. It's about, can you impact a game in other ways? That's why I like Lizotte so much. He'll be physical. He'll hit you. He'll be great on the PK, and he'll just be a spark plug. And quite frankly, when I think about the Penguins the last couple of years, boy, I don't think they've really played with enough emotion. So I think he could be a key piece of it.
He sounds like a guy that we let go at Seattle in the expansion draft.
Yeah, I mean, look, these guys are not easy to find, and so you've got to put guys in these positions. We talked earlier about knowing your roles, so the Penguins haven't had that these last few years. The bottom line is you got Letang, you got Malkin, you got Carlson, you got Sid. Okay, we know more or less what we're going to get out of those guys. Nothing. The one thing that hasn't changed is these years have gone by. These last 3, 4, 5 years, those guys, they're going to slow down. Even though Sid looks like he's not going to slow down, right. Sid will slow down. You need a supporting cast to better support those players.
Right.
Penguin supporting cast hasn't been up to the task the last couple of seasons. Could this one do it? Maybe. I'll be honest with you. At the moment, they don't look like a playoff team to me.
Okay.
Because if you think about if they're going to get in, all right, who was a playoff team that's coming out? Washington beat them last year. I think Washington's going to be better, and not because of Pierre-Luc Dubois that I'm not a big fan of. I just think they've made a lot of moves this offseason. I think the Capitals are going to be better. And I also know this. Jersey didn't make the playoffs last year. And I think they had the best summer of anybody in the division easily, maybe the best summer of anybody in the league, in building their defense and getting Markstrom in goal. I think they're going to win the division. I think Carolina's time has kind of come and gone. Carolina's still going to be very, very good, but I'm not sure that their window is still there to get to the final and win a cup. And I think Jersey's going to be one team that's going to pass the Penguins. So who's going to come out? Who's going to go in?
That's why they play the games, right, my friend? Hey, thank you for joining us tonight. This has been very educational, very informative, and I'm all fired up for hockey season. I can't. As great as the Steelers, I felt they looked pretty damn good. Okay, on Sunday they only had 2 3-and-outs. That's a big plus to me. But as much as I enjoyed that, I'm looking forward to watching the boys on ice soon. So thanks for spending some time with us tonight, Bob. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And thank you all so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Let's go, Pens.
Yep.
Fellas, that was very informative. What an interesting ride he had. He actually got to live out his dream, being involved with that organization all his life. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So, any final thoughts before we get out of here and wrap up the show, because it's almost go time for our pigskin. Hey, look, it's almost go time for our pigskin show. So, yeah. Hey, we did get one hi from a guy up in Canada. How you doing, Barbecue with Neil? Thanks for joining us tonight. We're glad to have you here.
Hey, that barbecue moose, if you guys had barbecue moose, it's really good up in Canada.
Where's that? Where is it?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Neil, don't pay any attention to him. Don't pay any attention to him. T-Sizz,
hey, you can find me on Instagram and the Axe at 1T Youngie.
Excellent. We know where we can find Rasheen.
He's in the Commander Center.
Yeah.
Command Center. That Commander Command.
Oh, the Commander.
That's going to be our future home for our in-person shows. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully by the end of the month, we'll be able to do one of our live shows out at Rasheen's Command Center. Chops couldn't join us tonight. Sorry, everybody, but he will be on the Pigskin Show coming up next. You can find him at The Real Big Chops or by his government name on Facebook, Michael Gregory Mills. Join us here on the Original Sports Podcast by checking out our webpage, podpage.com, Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maradei. Hey, like our Facebook page, join the conversation on Twitter, reach out to us on Snapchat. All of that is OSP with MM. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and obviously YouTube at Original Sports Podcast. Big shout out to our networks, Let's Talk Sports, Sideline Sports, Elite Sports and Entertainment, Manning Media, and Pete One Network. It's been great working with all of them. Remember, you can catch this show. If you can't watch it on your computer, you can catch it on Roku from 7 to 8 every Tuesday night. We are live on there. Let us know if you have any comments, questions, suggestions of future guests. If you want to jump on yourself and talk with us, email us at originalsportspodcast@gmail.com. Also, I want to give a shout out to my guy, Steve Medley, for doing our voice intro, Charlie Hodgson for doing our music intro and outro. Catch us next Tuesday to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast.
Yeah.
This podcast is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. Learn more at listenfrederick.com.